I thank you. What a beautiful group. I am so delighted. Thank you so much. I know how much is on everyone's plate, and I really truly appreciate you taking the time to come and be here for this. This is really part of our effort to call attention to the tremendous intellectual and creative capital that we have in this. It's beautiful sunset outside. And just to build a stronger audience for that, and also to create collaborations and connections with people from outside of the Pacific Northwest. So, case in point, I am so delighted to introduce you to Jason Gubbiotti, who I have known for 25 years. I was there at the start of his career in Washington, D.C. We did, I think, 3 solo shows and a number of group shows at Fusebox. He was with us when we got into Miami Basel. We took him there and they got on the national stage. Ellen Molesworth put his work into a show called Landscape Confection, which was an important show that started at the Wexner Center and went to the Orange County Museum and to the Contemporary Art Museum in Houston. He then fell in love with a French curator and moved to France. But was still showing in the U.S. and building. He's in many important collections on the East Coast. He's in the National Gallery of Art collection. We had a really great run, and he has been showing throughout Europe at many stay in important places. Most recently at Ballinglen,
I had a fellowship for 6 weeks in Northwest Ireland, in a place called Ballinglen. I did that October, November, and some of the pieces were made there.
He shipped some of the pieces and then was going to ship the rest, and they got stuck in Trump tariff limbo in Ireland, and there was a chance that they could have been disposed of, and Jason had to fly back to Ireland, get the pieces out of customs, and then we decided he would bring it. So he was like the legend of Alexander Calder riding on School of Wire. Yeah, the most of the show was like in his suitcase. So it was exciting. But
The paintings were in customs for 7 weeks. Like just
so they
after during them.
Yeah. It's been really exciting to see Jason get critical attention. He's been reviewed many times in the Washington Post, Hypoallergic, Modern Art Notes, Two Coats of Paint, and Irish Arts Review, Art in America, and Art Forum. Anyway, here we are again, 25 years later. And I'm very excited. This will be its first show as Pacific Northwest first solo exhibition. And then Simone, I know most of you know Simone, but to me, he is the epitome of a gentleman and a scholar, and so deeply grateful that he agreed to write this essay and be part of this project. And it's just a beautifully written, coherent, concise, gorgeous essay, and we're so thrilled that he's part of it. So, for those of you who don't know Simone, he is a professor in the art history department. His areas of research focused on marginal spaces within contemporary art, including its relationship to agriculture, craft, utopian and dystopian impulses. He works as a freelance curator and correspondent for Flash Art magazine and writes for a variety of publications. He has taught at the Academy of Fine Arts in Urbino, Italy, and was assistant researcher at MATSI, the National Museum of 21st Century Art in Rome. He holds a PhD in history of contemporary art from Sapienza University in Rome. Anyway, thank you. Thank you both for being here. I'm going to turn it over to Dave about British, and there is a poster to the exhibition, and Simone's essays on the ask their hobbies if you want to take one.
Okay, well, good evening, everyone, and thanks again, Sarah, for this fine invitation. I think this is a perfect setting for this kind of conversation. And I would like to start really from the end and from the reason why we're here and from this exhibition, Static Burst, that gathers recent works from your production from 2024 to 2025. Right. And I would just ask you plainly, starting from the title, actually, because that's the first element that we encounter before even seeing the expo.
Oh boy. Can I get to the title? It might be easier. Yeah, I didn't have the title 2 years ago.
I know. The title always comes there.
Yeah. I can start a little bit with just the paintings in general. This is the first paint, like this is the first painting from the show that I made. That was the end of 2024. Most of them were made in 2025. And then I made a few over the past month and a half. So this one I finished about a week and a half ago. And then these small paintings, like there's this little silver painting and there's a red and white painting in the back corner. Like that was finished. Both of those were finished about the day before I came here. Because I had an extra week or two and I couldn't sit still. So it's just like I could take two more. So I guess some other things too. These were made like, I'm gonna go back even a little before that. Up until a year and a half ago or 2 years ago, I was making paintings where each painting was very different in its structure. I was building very specific supports for each painting. Some were thick, some were thin, some moved around the wall, some were on linen, some were on wood. They all moved around. And I wanted to start a set of paintings that were based on that format. And I was getting these really nice panels, that size. And I just said, oh, I'm going to make a series of paintings, make, 12 of them or something like that. And so I that was a whole new kind of process for me where it was more focused on the painting themselves than the supports and how they relate a lot. But if you do notice, like, even though they're the same surface area, each support of them is made differently. And then I kind of played with that a little bit. Like there's this painting here with the same format. It's actually two of those panels, double. And then the small ones are half of that size. But yeah, then, these paintings got really focused on there was a lot more image-based stuff. And, the earlier ones are these real kind of crazy staticky kind of explosions. I was referring to them early on as bursts. And, yeah, so when I was coming up with the title, then I guess, I was talking to Sarah a lot, and I was doing a lot of notes and writing. And, there was this kind of, I had a lot of stuff going on in my life, and I just felt this sort of staticky kind of feelings. And I was like, that's all coming through the paintings, especially like this blue one and then those sorts of things. So yeah, so I was actually with the title, I think I had the title Static Burst, and then Sarah and Pat were like, what about burst plural? I was like, great. Let's go there. So there we go.
And when I first encountered your work and I was asked to think about it and write about it, my first natural operation was to put it in the trajectory of the history of art, because that is also my background. And so I was trying to place this kind of work, obviously, first of all, in really the history of painting itself. And yeah, we will talk about that in a little bit, but also specifically abstraction, obviously, a certain type of abstraction. So the idea of the emphasis on the support that you mentioned, obviously a geometric abstraction that comes from the art edge language, but also the idea that the truth to materials is another aspect that is crucial to your practice. So the idea that all the materials are immediately available to the visitor, that everything is declared in a way, the whole process of painting. Aspects such as rhythm or opticality. I don't want to be self-referential, but those are just aspects that I was mentioning in the text. So the idea also of the craftsmanship is really, I think, crucial in this type of work. And more general problems of form, space, that are, natural in the history of abstraction. And so I just wanted to ask you about this. How do you face yourself? Yeah, exactly. In the more historical context.
I think for me, and it's with every painter, is you start with the support's the first thing you deal with. You make a decision how big it is, yada, yada, yada. And like when I was in art school, I realized that if I was just buying stretchers at the art store, that I was going to build core and whatever else. And one of my teachers will like, just make them. And I was like, oh. So I made one and it was terrible. And then I made another one and it was a little better and it was wobbly. So I went and bought 1x6s at Home Depot and made this like block, and I was like, you can sit on this and it won't move. And then I made this painting, and I was like, oh, it's not neutral, like this thing is not neutral. So then, since I don't know, the middle of art school, I started working on this sort of thing, and it just kind of took off on its own, I guess. Um, we're gonna have to go back to questions. So supports, what you were talking about. What was the next thing? Just painting itself.
Painting itself, and obviously that is a whole other problem.
Right.
When Joseph Kossuth was saying, when a painter, deciding to paint is a decision that takes into account the whole conventions of the medium. It means that you are somehow subscribing to that language and to that history.
Right. And so like, I'll start with the painting then. Like I think for a long time I had this friction between the object and the painting, and I liked playing with that. I liked that the painting wasn't matching up with the support sometimes. Sometimes the painting rolls off the side, sometimes it doesn't line up. Sometimes I would say it's like sheets on a bed that don't fit right or something like that. So yeah, those were just issues that I was just bringing to my work. This body work is like like in 2021 I was making some works where like the painting itself and the support were of equal importance, kind of like back to Frank Stella in the early 60s, where painting itself followed the edge of the painting, and I was working with that a little bit, where these I really wanted to focus on images, on painting and structures and things like that, and just sort of giving myself a format to explore that. So there's that. And then also about just materials and truth and things, like I really like the idea that it's like studio paint on wood panels, like how it's been done for, centuries. And it really is like a unit of measure. It's like playing piano, like put somebody in front of a piano, what do you got? And I like that it's a way of, yeah, it is like in terms of art history, it's like, we've been making paintings on wood panels for like centuries. I like that dialogue. I'm not trying to go off and find new mediums, and there's nothing to base it on or something.
But then at the same time, it's not an historicism, your kind of work, because there's a lot of like diversions and
Yeah.
irregularities that are inserted into the process. And so maybe one aspect that I think it's fascinating is the connection with the place. Because we think about abstraction as something that is obviously the very word declares it, detached from reality, and there's no really physical connection with the biography of the painter, or even the place where abstraction happens. But that is not your case, for example. So you are American, but then you moved in, like Sarah mentioned, in the French countryside, on the outskirts of Paris. These paintings were made both in your studio in Paris, but also in this residency in Dublin. And I think you were afterwards reflecting about how the place where
Yeah.
referencing were.
For sure. Like a good example, I'm trying to think of some painting. Like when I was in Ireland for 6 weeks, and I was in this tiny village, and my neighbors were cows, and there was no one there. Like I did see my paintings start to kind of open up and sort of soften, and where like this blue painting here, like Pacific Ocean, and this painting actually started in France, and I finished it in Ireland. But yeah, I just allowing myself to just sort of have the paintings breathe a little bit. Like the gold painting in the back corner there, like, is really open. And it was just, yeah, allowing myself to sort of start and sit back afterwards and not feel like I have to occupy the whole space, or just charge it completely. They are really saturated, and I think a lot of that is just taking things, whatever's happening in life, and just, it is sort of an alchemy, I guess, of putting it all into there. So some of the paintings are a lot more busy um than other ones, for sure. And so actually, like, in terms of this body, it's like, it is crazy because it took over, I made other works during this time, but it's almost like going from there to there, it's almost like I see the last part of this show as like the first part of the next show or the next book or something like that. Like those paintings crept in at the end. So I feel I like that. That's good. It's usually that what happens with me, like in shows where it's like almost the last part's like throwing stuff out there to, dig up later on or something, or it's like I think of them planting seeds, or you have like archaeology, like going to dig up your own stuff. It's but I can discover my own work. Just because I made it doesn't mean I understand it.
Right. Something I wanted to ask you about, and we didn't really talk about this, are the titles of the paintings, because all of them are, there are very specific titles. Here, I'm thinking about Acapulco Gold, that painting there, American Standard. So- So, what is the process of the
My process of titles, I do have like a bank of titles that I keep in my computer now. It used to be in notebooks, but it's either on my computer now. And so I do assign titles to things. Sometimes it comes afterwards. The one thing I did realize, like on the way here on the flight, because I had so much time to think about this show, I was thinking about the titles, and almost all of them have like nature somewhere inserted into them. That one's called Air Softener. That one's called Specific Oceans. That one's called Educating Trees. That one's called Permanent Waves. So it does have all these elements of nature. There's one called I Fought Piranhas. You know, one's called Starburst, and definitely like those kinds of things. Where I was making that painting, it was just like, oh, like this one and the yellow one in the back. Like I made those in Ireland, and I was living in the rain for 6 weeks, and almost all the works I made were like super bright candy colors. It was almost like the colors that I was looking for. Like when I used to live in DC in the summer, if you ever spent the summer in DC, it's so hot and so humid. And I would just realize by the end of the summer, all my paintings were like icy blue. It was just like trying to make air conditioners if I studio or something like that. So yeah, like that one just reminded me of like juicy fruit from the early '80s. Well, which was it was like the horrible chewing gum things or whatever with like silver wrapped on. And it's like the last thing I think to make in rural Ireland. So yeah.
I would like to read you one quote because I'm prepared for this talk. So there's one quote. I mean, this was a great opportunity.
Her names both end in a vowel, so
Right. Like think about abstraction and the definition that Ed Reinhardt coined for abstraction art is, quote, to present art as art and as nothing else, separating and defining it more and more, making it purer and emptier, more absolute and exclusive.
So how do I feel about that?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think and if I'm translating that right, it is like this purity, and it's like it's not trying to be anything else. It's something we were talking about earlier, where it's like it's not trying to. I'm making a painting. I'm using paint. I'm not trying to make a portrait of somebody, or I'm not trying to replicate a landscape. I'm not trying to replicate light coming through. So it's like this is what paint does. This is what I can do with it. And yeah, painting is like, at least at this stage for me, it points to itself. It points to other things outside itself. Like I do like, for instance, palettes that point to things in the world. So it's sort of taking familiar things and making them a little unfamiliar, or it sparks something in you, like, I don't know. It's like like when I was living in Switzerland, I would I'd always be taking notes and wherever, and I would see like the colors of the bus or something, and it would be like these three grays and some orange, and I would like write those down, and I would kind of use that as a base. But that's just me kind of painting my environment one way or another without painting it directly or something. So, what else? I like Ed Reinhardt a lot. He made those black paintings, and it was just like, all right, we have to start over.
Yeah, right. And in fact, I wanted to ask you also about the relationship with modernism. I read something very inspiring by Barry Shrapsky about this relationship of our time with modernism. He said that this relationship is equal to the one between Renaissance and Mannerism. So we are in the Mannerist phase with regards to modernism. So now the concern is not about what a painting is, but actually how to make a painting.
Right.
That I thought was something that resonates with you.
Yeah, I think, like that sort of thing. And I look at a lot of artists like from the 60s, where it was like there was this moment in American painting with the 50s and the 60s. It's like, how are you making this? And you can see these steps going from, say, Jackson Pollock to Barnett Newman and to Frank Stella and all these. And it was like almost this sort of lineage. And you could almost predict where it was going or something like that. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know what it is in me exactly, but this idea of like how to make a painting, it's a source for it or something. It's like they're fuel for one another for sure. Like people say, what's your inspiration? And it's like what I made just now or something like that. It's like I think of the paintings or my studio as like this self-fueling sort of thing. It's like one painting leads to another and something sparks and something, and then oh, it can work from there and everything. So
in your case, another layer is given by your transition from the US to Europe, which is quite unusual. I mean, we see maybe the opposite happening, and your openness to this new context and all the different, influences that you got in Europe. And you were saying before that you really make European painting. You were talking about the skill, obviously, of painting, but maybe it's not only that factor.
I don't know what you're. Yeah. It's like a mate. Yeah. I don't know what's in you. Yo, yeah, I know. It's like. I don't. No. No. It's funny because when I'm in Europe, everyone's like, "Oh, these are so American." Like this definitely comes from American art or something, and I'm like, okay, my painting wasn't made in a cottage or something like that. But where do we go from there? I think in terms of like European painting or whatever at scale, because like we were talking about, like in like Los Angeles, for instance, you have these big spaces, these big buildings and industrial space, and in Europe you just don't find that a whole lot. Maybe in Germany a bit, but in France it's like you just don't find those spaces. I mean, there's lots of reasons for that, I guess, but also like painting in old buildings and stuff, like all the rooms are small, and I don't know, it just happened sort of naturally that I started making smaller and smaller paintings. We were talking about people like Morandi, and those painters that were, it's like this feels good. I don't need to make paintings that are 8 feet, by 10 feet or something. Like, I don't know. They're sort of dehydrated. They're sort of, so everything in the world's getting smaller.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like your phone or it's getting more compressed.
Exactly. I mean, what kind of relationship do you see with the devices that we are interacting with? Because I don't know, I think there is some kind of like a technology of contemplation.
Yeah. I mean, I do, when I work and stuff, I do have a bad habit of listening to podcasts or the news or something like that. So even though I'm in my studio, I'm like sort of bombarded with kind of everything that's going on, which is slightly distracting.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's an art critic in DC, Kristen Capps, who wrote a review of my show and said these paintings had more anxiety in them than in the past. And that was like 2017. So do the math. But yeah, it was like all that just kind of stuff going on in the world just kind of got pushed into it one way or another, like being skeptical, paranoid, all this kind of, and I mean, this is, I don't know what, but when I'm in Europe, for instance, it's like you're 6 hours ahead of the East Coast, so you wake up in the morning and it's like, what happened last night, what did he say? It's an awful way to wake up in the morning. So if there is, there was that thing. It's like, what happens today and stays, or, oh, cool, it's the morning. So, like 10 in the morning, it's like yesterday's news. So I have a few hours of not being to it. Yeah. Or it's like, everything starts coming in at 8 or 9 in the morning on the East Coast. So that's like afternoon for me. So I have a few hours of peace and quiet.
So another idea that I think is more conceptual that I would like to hear from you about is this idea that comes from Shrapsky too, that is about the painting that he says is not only a painting but also the representation of an idea about painting. And he said that this is a kind of um, understanding of painting today. He was writing at the beginning of the 21st century. So
Right. So, yeah, that led to like what we were saying earlier. Like, I took that with like what Cezanne was saying was like, you make a painting with paint, not with ideas. And I still believe in that for sure because that's what I'm making. Like painting has limits, and I like playing in those limits. So, like the example that I've been using a lot is with music, where like I was listening to Rick Rubin talk about producing stuff and drummer saying like, oh, we want the drum sound to AC/DC's Highway to Hell. And he's like, you'll never get that. So don't try that because it's always going to be like some sort of um, bad version of that. So take what you have going on right now, that sound that you have or whatever, and make the best version of that. And I think I learned that starting at the end of art school where I was trying to replicate things. I was trying to replicate light or sunsets and it was like, or, kind of, yeah, it was just always falling short. I was never going to capture that. So just, yeah, making paintings about paintings or whatever is just felt more natural, I guess, there's nothing wrong with making paintings these days.
and this leads me to another concept, which is the idea of painting as something gratuitous. This was something that Michael Fried wrote. He was taking this concept from the philosopher Stuart Hampshire. So for gratuitous, he meant something that is not essentially the answer to a question or the solution to a presented problem. And this was modernist art.
Right.
So what we have after modernism is this idea of painting as something gratuitous that doesn't try to solve a problem.
Right. So it was speaking of Europe and American stuff, like you'd hear European artists say, so much of American art is like a solution to a problem, where like European painting is more about questions,
Yeah.
like leaving with a bunch of questions rather than solutions, which is actually pretty American. Like we are solution based, like this is our problem, how do we fix it? And I'll buy that a little bit, but I do like I don't know how to put that. Where do I go from there?
I mean, the idea of improvisation, I think, you mentioned that as an important part of the process. So this painting seems very, I don't know, pre-planned in a way, but then the process is constantly interrupted by...
So when Simone and I were talking, we did a video chat like a few weeks ago, and I said I'm actually kind of an abstract expressionist. And you kind of went like, we see what the hell, And I was like, no, that's how I work. Like I have maybe kind of an idea in the beginning, but they're all like slow motion improvisations. So like I might have kind of an idea of where it's going, but I really, yeah, I'm not painting Zorro paintings, obviously, or whatever, but they do evolve, for sure. And like some of the ones that are a bit more minimal, like the gold painting, it was like, sometimes not so much anymore, but before I was like trying to make the most economical painting, and it was like do one or two things to, and then it was like nope, doesn't work, have to add to it. And then so I was saying the really busy ones were the ones that didn't work out early on, and it's really hard to make a minimalist painting. Yeah, for sure, because this one's succeeding a little bit more. Yeah, all the stuff is happening. Everything from the front of the painting went to the edges like static electricity, or or some other like running or hiding or something. So that one was hard to look at in my studio for a while because there's just everything's on the edge, so you see these tiny little slices and your eyes don't like it. And my eyes didn't like it. It made me feel really uncomfortable. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna stay with that because
The format's making me so the format also was like a rough cut as well.
Right. So
Was that something you thought about? Or?
a little bit, yeah, for sure. Like Sarah and I, it was like when I was making it and I was telling her, I said, I'm working on this painting and that's kind of a love child between Rothko and Robert Ryman. And like Robert Ryman, his DNA came out a little bit more. I love Rothko. He was like out of all those people from the 50s and stuff, like he's the one that really spoke to me. There was a beautiful Rothko retrospective in Paris earlier in the year. It was really good to see. But yeah, Rothko out of all them was the one that really, really did it for me. So, they make sounds.
I lost track of time, so I don't know if I'm ready.
Yeah.
I can't go on for
Here's some questions.
Yeah, I mean, but so yeah, we have such an interesting audience. Pagers, formidable pagers in this audience, and
By the way, I was super happy when Sarah told me she was inviting a bunch of artists and stuff. I was like, nice.
And I understand.
RD Fury.
All art
People. When you was thinking about format of these works, is it related to like A4, A3, A2, A1, or are they just off of that? Because that almost looks close. That was a double A4. That could be an A3.
yeah, and so I've
Is
said
that European style?
yeah, they're yeah, and you know, to be honest, like I mean, one of the things that was kind of different of these pieces for me is like in the past when I was making stuff, everything was really strange sizes and shapes and everything. And the one art store that I go to in Paris is called Bosner, and they have these like this section of just like wood panels, and I just picked one of those up, and it's like this beautiful wood, and I was like, I'm just gonna use that. Like I'm not gonna cut it, I'm not gonna change it, and then I just started buying a bunch of them, and it was like I'm not tailoring it, I'm not cutting it off. It is kind of like it was a little difficult size for me because it's a little vertical. Like my intention, my instinct would be to like cut 2 inches off of it or something to make it a little more stout or something. So yeah, for me, like if you went back a few years ago and said you're gonna buy panels from a store and just use those, I'd be like, you know, I wanted everything very tailored, custom. So yeah, I'm getting used. They're starting to be comfortable. Like one painter that I like a lot is Tom Muskowski, and he always paid in these formats that were very standard, and I always liked that because I always thought of them as like a playground. You know, he made these paintings that were I think 12 by 16, and it was like every day he would go in and have a new game to play, you know, in that space, and that was the unit of measure. And when you see his shows, it was just like oh, and you didn't know which one was made first or last or whatever. It was very horizontal rather than this hierarchy of, you know, masterpieces that this one's the next level or something. I really like that of Tom. I like lots of things flipped for it.
I'm really interested in sort of how they're made. They're like obsessively, you know, like it's almost OCD levels, you know, carefulness to them, and they're just, I mean, they look immensely hard to make. I mean, because you're operating with no margin of error. I mean, are you?
Oh, but there's plenty of errors in the.
Yeah. I don't know. Ryman came up, and I think about Ryman a bit because also the fascination with how you attach the painting to the wall.
Exactly.
It's super important. And then what kind of, you know, not the famous quote, not what to paint, but how to paint. And this sort of exacting lines. I mean, do you tape them? Do you?
Oh yeah, yeah.
You've got to be taping them.
Oh yeah, I do. Yeah, it's all tape and stuff like.
Yeah.
I have cutting mats and I'm like all my rulers and a lot like in my studio. I'll just have all these strings of different tapes and stuff like that, all cut different sizes. And yeah, I don't know. It's just putting your stuff somewhere. You know, like it's like for me, it's a good. You know, I don't know. I hate saying like it's therapeutic or whatever, but you know, like for me to relax, like drawing for 30 minutes is really great, you know, but it's just taking a bunch of energy and just pushing it. A lot of these, my painting used to be really fluid. You know, like 25 years ago, I was making these oil paintings that was really fluid and wobbly and smooth and stuff, and they just got a little more. Yeah, and I kind of think of them as uptight with a sense of humor, you know, something like that. Like they do have a sense of humor to them, the colors and whatnot. Yeah, no.
Yeah, following up on your observations, you know, I hadn't seen your work in person until tonight, and when I saw them in reproduction, I assumed that they were like the 8 and 10 footers, and I was struck by the density of them, just how compressed they are. And I was like, oh, there's no way he's making these by hand and laying out little pieces of tape. I assure you, all predetermined and made on Illustrator, and that it was all adhesive stencils. That's insane.
You're a sick man.
You're stupid. I make masking tape pens too.
It's just that does not like.
Like that almost becomes a blur, even this close. Like surgical tools.
Razor blade surgery. Wow. Yeah, razor blade surgery.
Really impressive. But the most impressive was just they look super good.
Thanks, dude. I met Don the other night for the first time playing pool with him at Terry and Sylvan, so. Yeah, I don't know what to say. I appreciate that. I mean, they did, you know, the paintings that I was making 25 years ago or 20 years ago or something, they were a little hard edged, but I was making them with oil, and yeah, they just got more and more obsessive as time went on, sure. And I'm trying to soften myself up and make some, I don't know. I think like in terms of like what you're talking about, like cutting tape and stuff, one of the things I was thinking about a few years ago was like how music was made before computers, you know, how you did splicing tape and stuff like that. And when I was like, there was like Daria Dargashir who made the soundtrack, the theme song for Doctor Who, you know, that was like all math on tape. Yeah, she was basically making analog sounds and recording them on tape and then slowing them down, putting them in reverse, and it's all cutting and splicing. I was like, that's what I do, you know, like that's totally what I do, except paintings. But I really had an affinity when I learned, like, watched a documentary on her. I was like, yeah, I like her.
I guess the other important point would be the fact that the sides become such an important part of the works, right? That it's not just the face of the panel, that the sides somehow take the painting into being an object.
Right. So like a few things about that. Like paintings that I was making, like getting out of art school, I was doing oil paintings and I wasn't taping the sides, so the paint would like roll off the edge and stuff like that. And then when I started making these, I said, I can do that. I can just, instead of having the paint roll off or something, I can just, you know, control it and, you know, that sort of thing. And then the other thing was like talking about art stuff. In college, I was at the National Gallery, I was looking at a Frank Stella painting from early 70s, the ones that are all like shaped like that on canvas, and then, you know, the colors and stuff. And I was looking at the side and it was like a disaster. There was like canvas glued on it, pipe pools. It was like a mess. And I said something to my professor. I said, you know, the Stella at the National Gallery, it's a disaster on the side. And he's like, well, it's your fault for looking at the side. You're not supposed to. Like at that time, it was really like you say yes, and yeah, and the sides is like whatever. And I was like, well, fuck that. Like, and so, yeah, it's like, oh, dude, how can you make a painting like this and leave the sides like that? It's like having a nice tailored suit and the inside is a piece of garbage. You know, like, you know. So actually, afterwards I can.
Just your edge is gorgeous. It's
Right. But I mean, there's secret stuff on the back, like I do like sometimes when I'm working on them and stuff like that, I make little cute cleats for them too.
What about that color? That's an amazing color.
Which one?
That the middle, the sort of the soft grain sort of.
Yeah. Like, where does that come from?
Yeah, how long did it take to get that? Because it's just gorgeous. Then you've got that little, some little things there. Oh no, look at, yeah, I don't, I'm not, it's very different.
I think I just wanted something. Yeah, I think I just wanted something kind of icy. And I was telling Simone beforehand, like that one was the last one I made, and I'm like, those colors in northern France in the wintertime. And afterwards, I realized it. Like it's kind of like here, I guess, where it's just gray.
Yeah.
And like I guess in terms of shop talk or whatever, like I'll make a logo color. Like I'll have a base color, and then for all the other things, I'll take that color and add like a little bit of green to it, a little bit of blue. So it's all based on the same thing. And so when you have that block that's a little more green, it's, I don't know, I guess in music or something like that, it's like kind of staying in a tonal range or a key or something like that. It goes together. And then this one, it's actually, I started something new where I wanted to like cut into the face of it. So like I took my router and I routed out that channel in the middle, which was, interrupting the surface or something like that. But the woodworking, like back to the woodworking a little bit, like when I can't sleep and at like 5 in the morning or 4 in the morning, I'll watch videos on like Japanese woodworking. And it like seeps into my head of like, how can I, just little things like that or something.
That explains a lot. Where did the burst come from? How did it emerge? Because it's very striking in all those ones where it's there.
Wait, this one here?
Well, all these ones that have that explosion in the middle.
Yeah. Like 2 or 3 years ago, I was making a lot of works where everything was like shoved to the sides. And then I started making these other pieces where it was like everything was kind of concentrated in the middle. And I was almost like making these forms out of lines that look like manicured brush strokes. And I was kind of wanting this ball of stuff in the middle. So like this kind of motif or whatever like that is, yeah, I don't know. It's just something where I start sometimes. Like I can start with things pushed to the edge, and then I started making these paintings that were, pushed in the middle and kind of blowing out or something. I do make them like, I don't know how to put it. Like it's hard to, you have to look at it later, but like all these lines and stuff, those are like this stuff, like that's all raw wood, like that's not paint or anything like that. And so from the beginning, I'll stay with that structure. And somebody told me like when I was in Ireland that these paintings almost reminded them of woodcuts, like how they were made, and I never thought of that in a way. And I was like, I'll go down like they.
Yeah, since we're talking about Fion's chart, which is the London Weeze, about that, he's talked a little bit more about that because that one really drove Sarah and me a little bit crazy. Because he set his images out there, and we were like, Jason, the right panel is not square. This like was wrong with the photograph. Even now, looking at it, it looks trapezoidal, right? So
Right. So yeah, like when we were installing and stuff, I was looking, like I was showing them like this painting and the blue painting, sure. And it's not trying to be smarty pants or whatever, but like I'll make some of the lines that are like parallel and perpendicular to the edges, and then other ones I'll make slightly off. So your brain is like trying to make sense of them. And so like on this painting at the bottom, you have like things that are a little off, a little angle like that, but then the ones above it are straight. And it's like I'm always trying to recorrect them or something like that. And your brain I don't know, it just does something in your head, like try to make sense to it. And yeah, sometimes it's hard for me to look at. Like, yeah, for sure. My eyes start to go crazy.
They force you to, because there's not one point of focus, but they really force you to take time and really kind of scan them in a different way. I think that's really interesting. It's like the opposite of how you react to an image on a screen where you're just, flipping through. You really have to take time to kind of analyze and scan it. It's just not something you can, look at and look away from quickly at all.
One of the things that I was talking to Pat and Sarah earlier in the week about was, like that sort of symmetry or you know, those kinds of things. And I was watching a documentary about the stealth bomber. And one of the reasons that it's stealth is that the left side and the right side are slightly off. They're slightly different. It confuses the radar systems with some other stuff too, like this speckle paint they have and whatever. And I like that, like I was making these paintings at the time that were symmetrical, but then they were slightly off. So there would be like a little space over here that is different over here. And I like that idea that it was like the painting was confusing the brain or something like that. Like your brain wants it to be symmetrical, but it's not. And it kind of goes back and forth.
There's a question from Alice.
It's very well formulated yet, but it's partly inspired by a number of references you've made in the conversation to kind of the slowed down audio tape, the videos late at night of the Japanese woodworking, the self-bomb, because I thought Simone did such a good job bringing in a great set of our historical references, but I also think a bit of kind of the futurists when I look at this. It feels like really like technology is so present.
Yeah, yeah.
And like the circuitry board is going to be a very obvious reference point, but there is something like very hardware about them. I think both you're interested in like making them and dealing with the materiality and the melting and the but I just wanted you to say more about that because there's something that feels very contemporary about them. I'm teaching a class right now in visual culture studies, and we're talking a lot about AI generated images, and like today we're talking about remote sensing and a lot of ways that like images have a kind of like smoothness but mask their all the things they're entangled with. Like they look simple and smooth on the surface, but yours feel like they're really getting at kind of the hardware, like the circuitry, the thing that's like not the image on the screen, but like if you took your iPhone apart.
Right. Like I do sometimes refer to my paintings as like handmade microchips or something like that. And also I know like looking at my paintings on the screen, they do look like they could be digital images or something. And then like their art critics have like, oh, these are made by hand. Like I saw the press release and I thought they were all decals or either digital prints or something. And it's like you see little errors, you see the paint move and stuff like that. So yeah, for sure. It's really important for me that they're handmade like that. My son is really into watches, so I've been sort of gathering stuff about watches with him, and like watching stuff with him, I'm like, I kind of feel like a watchmaker sometimes is kind of doing surgery or something like that. It's like, yeah, and I guess the great thing about paintings is they don't have to work. It's like, you know, it has this engineering to it, but if something doesn't quite fit it, that's the poetry of it, where yeah, no one dies, no one like nothing breaks. No one is no one missed the train. The train doesn't explode when it hits an animal.
You said something earlier there about images and objects, and looking at them closely in person. It's there's so much. They have image-like qualities, but they're absolutely objects, and they're even down to the surface, the texture on the surface, the tiny amount of layer between one level of paint and the next is really crucial to the way that they operate. Right. But seeing refresh and you miss all of that. It's like with Mondrian too. They're actually low relief sculptures.
Right, exactly.
These are also still like that, super low relief, but still the sculptural quality of the surface is completely crucial. And then of course the sides obviously are that whole other dimension that Frank Stella felt he could ignore. Yeah. To his detriment.
Frank Stella did okay. I think, yeah, I mean, one of the things that there's an article that I have like writing in my head, which is, you know, a painting on Instagram, you know, or painting for Instagram, and like everything that's happening now, it's like with the internet and everything, painting kind of loses out the most. Like internet's great for music, it's great for film, photography, painting loses. You know, and there's a lot of really good painting that was bad on the internet, and there's a lot of bad painting that was good on the internet. You know, like there's a lot of that. You know, I see some stuff on Instagram that I see in person, I'm like, oh, you know, like he spent a lot of money making that look good. But like, It's fine, you know. But for me, yeah, it's like going to see live music. Like you can listen to the recording on Spotify or whatever, and then when you go see it in person, you're like, oh yeah, like you know, there's little glitches. There's like somebody screwed up, you know, and it's really tactile. And it's like, I mean, we all felt it after COVID. You know, like the first first show I saw like out of COVID, I was like, oh, they were like, it's there, you know. It was like this whole sensual experience again. I love the sensuality of art. You know, it is a really sensual thing, and we kind of forget about it because probably I'm sure the majority of the art we look at is on the internet. You know, which is so I'm glad that we could see paintings in a ring with each other. I don't take that for granted anymore.
You mentioned the European painting versus American painting. I was thinking of like the Jan van Eyck Arnold Feeney wedding portrait. The scale of it, you know, it's small, it's intimate, and all those Dutch, you know, paintings from that. You have Vermeer, have that Vermeer exactly.
Yeah, there was a huge Vermeer show in Amsterdam, and even just at the Rijksmuseum, it's like you see the painting, and it's like there's only one person that can stand in front of it at a time, and I love that. You know, especially in today on your screen, it's like you can post something on Instagram and millions of people could look at it at the same time. Where like, you know, my paintings like this, they are that kind of Vermeer thing. And it's like one person at a time, and it's personal, it's not public and declarative, and you know. So yeah, that's important to me for sure. Yeah.
That's a beautiful, you know, that I hope all of you enjoyed this as much as I did. Your contributions were so wonderful. This is what I hope for, is a conversation like this, and I just can't tell you how much I appreciate all of you being here. Thank you, Jason.